Do chestnut or oak trees lose their leaves earlier in autumn? What was the weather like 1 week ago today? How confident are you? Believe it or not, these questions were the first instance of forensic science being researched within the field of psychology. While many were involved in the process of acknowledging and furthering the intersection between psychology and the legal system, today we're going to be looking at 4 psychologists and their impact on the criminal justice system, in particular the courtroom. Our first POI is James McKeen Cattell. Cattell was one of the first to research forensic psychology, and he did so by looking at the psychology of testimony. In 1893, at Columbia University, Cattell performed an informal study on testimony in which he asked 56 college students the questions previously mentioned, and what he found was that the students' confidence levels did not correlate to their correctness. Cattell's research paved the way for other psychologists to pursue their interests in forensic psychology. In 1901, our second POI, by the name of William Stern, attempted a more in-depth study to test the effectiveness of eyewitness accounts. He set up a fake fight in one of his law classes that ended with the student drawing a gun, at which point he ended the scenario. The students in this law class were then tasked with providing reports of what had just occurred in both oral and written formats. Stern found that the students' reports were the most inaccurate for the second half of the scenario, when tensions were at their highest. The findings of these studies led Stern to make several claims about the psychology of testimony, including concerns about certain suggestive questions and how they may impact the accuracy of an eyewitness account, as well as looking at the differences between adult and child witnesses and the proper steps needed to be taken in order to get an accurate report from each. Stern would later found the first psychological journal in which one could study testimony, entitled Contributions to the Psychology of Testimony. The third POI we're going to look at shows up in 1906, 5 years after Stern's study. Hugo Munsterberg, a German psychologist, was called upon to review a murder trial. The defendant was mentally disabled and had confessed to murder, but later claimed he was innocent. Munsterberg believed the defendant was innocent and attempted to investigate into how the confession was obtained, as he suspected it was not done fairly. However, the judge did not consider Munsterberg to be any sort of expert in the field and refused his request to review the case, and the defendant was hanged. A couple of years later, Munsterberg went on to publish On the Witness Stand, a collection of essays in which he made several arguments for why psychology had a place in the legal system, and particularly in the courtroom. Our final POI comes several years later, in 1922, and was actually a student of Munsterberg.
William Marston!
That was the copyright-free version of the Wonder Woman theme, in case that wasn't clear. Anyway, known by comic book fans as the creator of Wonder Woman, Marston also had a very large impact on forensic psychology. William Moultan Marston became the first professor of legal psychology at American University, and is the creator of the systolic blood pressure test, which eventually became a component in the modern polygraph, though Marston did also invent a lie detection machine prior to the invention of the modern polygraph. Marston was one of the first psychological consultants for the legal system, and like all of his predecessors, he performed studies on the psychology of testimony. That little Wonder Woman reference I made earlier was also more than just a fun fact. To many, it showed Marston's passion and interest in deception, as he included in her arsenal the golden lasso of truth, which could force her captives to tell her the truth, something that Marston had hoped to replicate with his lie detection machine. So, similarly to psychology as a whole, forensic psychology was not well received early on, and has made tremendous strides to get to where it is today. Through the work of countless passionate men and women, the criminal justice system now recognizes the legitimacy of psychology in the courtrooms, as advocated by Munsterberg, and research is also still being done based off of the early work of Cattell to review the fallacies of eyewitness testimony. Finding the truth is so important in the legal system. And though we will never have a golden lasso of truth, the work of the psychologists that I've mentioned today, as well as several others, is bringing us pretty close. Thanks for watching.